G'day guys, how's it going? So in this video, we're going to look at another compound type called the array. Now, if you've been doing programming, you'll know what an array is in other programming languages. But for those who don't, it's essentially a list of a specific data type, right? And only a singular data type. So you get multiple of the same data type, but you can only have one type in that list. So it's probably better for me to quickly demonstrate that with an example. So say I want to have a list of player scores, right, for each individual player. Well, to declare an array or initialize an array, you just have to use square brackets like that, right? So what this is saying is we have no player scores at the moment, right? We don't have any players. That could be possible, right? Well, what's more likely is you're going to have a list of scores inside it. So we could say something like the first user got 23, the second user got, I don't know, 35, the third user got 0, the fourth user got 72, and let's say the last user got 40, right? So now we have 5 individual scores, right? But remember, I said that we have to have the same type inside this list, right? So what I can't do in an array is specify a different type like so. Now we could get away with this with tuples, but we can't with arrays. And I can demonstrate that to you by running this. And you'll see it says expected integer found char, right? And that's because all the items that precede this char are all integers, right? So that's what that error is telling us. Cool. So this is what is referred to as an implicit list. So I'll just quickly run that. It's going to give me a warning because I'm not using it, but that's okay. All right. So this is what is called an implicit list because we didn't define ahead of time the number of items that we wanted in this list. We let the data specify, or the number of items we typed here, specify the size of the array, right? But what you can see on screen in this grayed out area is a square box, right, that indicates what the type is, a semicolon, and then a 5. Now, what does the 5 mean? It's essentially a count of the number of items that are already in this array, right? So Rust, when it compiles this, would say, oh, okay, you really meant to say I wanted 5 I32 items inside of this array. And you can explicitly set that if you want to like that, right? Now, just remember, you need to have the semicolon between the two. It's not a comma or anything like that. It must be a semicolon. So you have the type and then the amount of that type. And then you can initialize it like so, right? What you can't do is you can't do this. So I want 5 individual, I want an array with 5 items in it, but I'm not going to set any values yet, right? Might be thinking something you might be thinking of doing, but if I run this, it's going to crash, right? It's going to crash because it's expecting 5 elements to exist inside this array, okay? And we haven't specified any. So that's another thing about Rust. You must always specify all 5 values ahead of time if you're going to initialize it like this, right? Cool. Now, in order to get the values out of an array, right, we can just use simple indexing, similar to what we saw with tuples, right? So we can do something like this. Say I want to get the score for the first player. So player score 1 equals, and we can go player scores. And then in brackets, we can basically access this item, this first item, right? Now, with most programming languages, we start with a 0-based index. So the first item is always 0, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we're trying to access this first one, so we're going to say index 0, right? And then we can print this out. So I can do something like print line, player score 1 is equal to player score 1, right? If I save this and I run it, all the errors go away, and now we can see player score 1, 23, right? So it's been able to access that first item. Let's do that for the rest. So let's just get all 5 out here. So I'm just going to quickly do some copying and pasting here. So we'll change this to 2, we'll change this to 3, 4, and 5. Cool. And now to get item at the second position, we're going index of 1. 1. For the third one, index of 2. For the fourth, 3. And for the fifth is 4. Okay. So just remember, it's always starting at 0. Cool. And then we're just going to copy the rest of this. Do this 5 times as well. So now there'd be player score 2, 3, 4, and 5. Cool. And then I'll just change this to 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, if I run this again, now we're going to see all the scores that were inside of the array, right? We've got the first score, the second score, the third, fourth, and fifth, right? So that's how you can access the scores using indexing, right? Now, just keep in mind, if you try to do something silly like let negative score, a negative player score, and you do something like player scores, and you try to access, I don't know, 5, right? Something that doesn't exist in the array because it's outside of the bounds of the number of items, right? So remember, index 5 would be the 6th item, but we only have 5 items in total, right? So when I run this, it's going to give me an error, right? It's going to say index out of bounds. The length is 5, but the index is 5, right? So basically what it's saying is that if the length was 6, then it'd be okay to have an index of 5, but because the length is 5, the highest index we can have really is 4. And basically the compiler's catching that as well as my IDE is catching that here. Cool? So just be mindful of that. You also can't do negative numbers, obviously. So some languages will allow you to put negative values and it will fetch it from the back. What Rust will tell you, if you try to do this, is that you should use something called playerscores.length, right? So we haven't got into functions just yet, but generally if you want to go in the opposite direction, this is what Rust recommends that you do. So then I can come in here and just paste that in. And now I'm going for the length, right, which is 5. I'm minus 5. So that should give me index 0, which would be the first value, right? So now if I take this and I just quickly print it out at the top here. Let's just go, oops, I spelled that wrong. I just go negative score. I'm just making this up on the fly here. So if I do that and I run, what you're going to see is I get the first item, right? Because I'm going what the length of the array is, which is 5, right? So it's counted up the number of these. It's basically getting this number, right? That's what len is. And then it's subtracting 5 from it, which 5 minus 5 is 0. That's the same as going player scores 0, which gives me 23. Cool? So that's how you do that. Now, you can also initialize an array without hard coding in the numbers like this, right? What you can do instead is you can use this form of syntax. So say you want all the scores to be initialized to 0 at the beginning of a game or something, right? So I can say, okay, I'm going to set 0 to everything. And obviously, I'm going to do that 5 times, right? Now, if I save this and I run it, oh, sorry, I need to get rid of that print statement because I deleted the variable. Run this again. But now you'll see that every single item is being set to 0, even though I didn't type 0 in 5 times here, right? So this is shorthand syntax for saying make it 0 5 times. Cool? And that's pretty much all you need to know about arrays for now. So I'm going to end the video here. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.